Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bensman, in your written testimony, you describe currently that we are experiencing the worst mass migration in American history. And you go on to set forth your background, what brought you to that conclusion. And then throughout your testimony, you talk about some of the impacts of that mass migration. And as a former prosecutor, I want to talk about one of those impacts that you begin speaking about on page 5 of your written testimony. You describe it as a great unnecessary crime wave. And you continue over onto page 6, where you set forth that most U.S. states do not keep track of crimes committed by illegal immigrants, and neither does the federal government. And then you opine that only Texas tracks much of the crime by non-U.S. citizens. And then you cite roughly a decade of statistics from the Texas Department of Public Safety. And those statistics are found on page 7, that between June 1st, 2011 and July 31st, 2022, that there were 259,000 illegal aliens charged with more than 433,000 criminal offenses. And those were just in the state of Texas. That of those offenses, there were 800 charged with homicide, 822 charged with kidnapping, 5,470 charged with sexual assault, 6,485 charged with other sexual offenses, and 4,945 charged with weapon offenses. You then, Mr. Bensman, go on later on page 7 to talk about some of those cases in particular. You talk about that in the state of Texas on April the 29th, that there was a 5-time deported Mexican national who murdered 5 individuals. Then in the next paragraph, you talk about that in April 2023, that there were 2 former middle school students who were found dead, their car riddled with bullets. We know that seated to your left, Ms. Tambunja just testified in her opening statement about her tragic loss. And thank you for being here. I want you to let you know that our heart goes out to you for the loss of your mother, the loss of your child, but what you're doing here today by calling attention to that is extremely important. And so, Mr. Bensman, I also pulled just a couple of headlines in preparation for the hearing today from cases that had occurred this year. January 23rd, teenager arrested in rape and murder of autistic Maryland woman was illegal immigrant and known MS-13 member. March the 7th of 2023, undocumented immigrant indicted on 11 counts of capital murder and abuse of a corpse that occurred in Montgomery, Alabama. June 2nd of 2023, 5 undocumented immigrants with ties to MS-13 charged with murder of Frederick Teen. And then the last one, the most recently, July 21st of this year, Mexican immigrant accused of grisly serial murders of 3 women in Dallas, Texas. Now, your findings contradict Mr. Byer, because Mr. Byer, in his written testimony and in his oral testimony, he says on page 21 of his written testimony that immigrants contribute to the safety and security of American communities. They directly lower the crime rate. He then went on in his opening statement to say that immigrants prevent crime. And so in the last minute of my time, Mr. Benson, I want to give you the opportunity to explain to this committee your findings as it relates to immigration and the effect that it has on crime, and contrast that with Mr. Byer's findings when he says that immigrants do not contribute to crime, and conversely, even says that they directly lower the crime rate. So in my last 30 seconds, Mr. Bensman, I'd ask you to please enlighten this committee and please educate us on your findings.
Okay, I have a whole 30 seconds to do that. I guess what I would tell you is that there is a comparative analysis that goes on, comparative research, where organizations try to compare illegal immigrant crime with crime rates committed by American citizens. That is completely faulty. analysis. You cannot compare those two, mainly because 100% of all crimes committed by illegal immigrants are avoidable and unnecessary because they should have been deported, like the man who slaughtered the Hondurans next door. Whereas we're kind of stuck with American citizens one way or another, aren't we? There's no escape hatch for pushing American citizens into another country before they commit a crime. So 100% of all illegal immigrant crime is avoidable and unnecessary, in my opinion. All of these comparative studies are bogus and should never, ever be made. There should never be a comparison made between those two things. I understand why that's done. It's done for, I'm hearing snapping. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.